She found the wallet on a rainy Tuesday, half stuck to the cracked sidewalk like a secret waiting to be discovered. The city smelled like wet pavement and fryer oil, the kind of smell that made a person nostalgic for simpler things even if they had never had them. She tugged her thin jacket tighter, the sleeve patched by a neighbor's sewing, and nudged the leather gently with her toe. It was heavy for its size, as if it held a whole life inside. For a second she thought about keeping it. People kept wallets all the time. She had seen it happen. A quick sale of whatever was inside could pay a month of electricity, maybe buy her little brother the antibiotics he needed, maybe cover the overdue rent without having to tell anyone. The thought rose like a hot thing in her chest and finished before it began. She had been raised on rules no school teaches. Never take what isn't offered, never lie about what you know, never sleep while someone else is hungry because of you. Her mother had passed those rules to her in whispers, on nights when the gas went off and the apartment held its breath. The wallet was a soft, black leather, glossy and new. When she opened it, the first thing she saw was an embossed card. No name, but a logo she didn't recognize, clean and metallic. Beneath it, a photograph slid free, and she caught her breath. A man in a tailored suit smiled with a practiced warmth. He was handsome in the way rich men are handsome. Everything measured, everything polished. There were several credit cards, some receipts, and a driver's license tucked inside. The name printed there was the kind of name that made headlines, the kind of name people mentioned when talking about yachts and foundations and towers that touched the clouds. She could feel the practical angle, the survival math that had shadowed her entire life, whispering possibilities. But then she remembered the last thing her mother had told her before she died. Give back what you find, because someday, someone might find your heart lying on a sidewalk. The wallet seemed to radiate harm or luck depending on who held it. She folded it into her palm like a fragile bird and stood up. The diner where she worked was a small place sandwiched between a laundromat and a pawn shop, neon letters buzzing above the door. The owner, Manny, always left one stool for her when the morning rush hit, a place to breathe between running orders. She stepped inside, dripping, and slipped behind the counter. The regulars called her Smile, as if it were a loan they could call in for free. She took out the wallet and turned it over in her hands. Find something? Manny asked, wiping a glass with a rag that had seen better years. A wallet, she said. There's an ID. I think it's important. Manny whistled low and peered at the photograph. Oh, that's one of them. Big league. People get paid to find things like this. She thought of the rent notice folded in the back of her dresser drawer, white paper with harsh black letters, and then the way her brother had coughed in the night. Her fingers hesitated. She could keep the cash inside, pawn a card, buy some breathing room. She could walk out the back door and be different tonight than she had been yesterday. But she slipped the wallet into her apron pocket instead. I'm going to the address on the ID, she said. If nobody's there, I'll hand it to the police. It had been raining for hours, and the city formed little rivers along the gutters. The address on the license was a place she had only seen in magazines, glass and stone, trees and pots, and a doorman who smelled like expensive cologne. The bell at the door chimed a polite, unhurried tone when she stepped inside. A young receptionist glanced up, eyebrows arched. Can I help you? The receptionist asked. I found a wallet, she said. There was a license with this address. The receptionist's fingers hovered over a keyboard. Then she picked up a phone. In less than 2 minutes, a man in an overcoat appeared from a private elevator, the kind of man who moved like a stage direction, measured, rehearsed. He looked like his photograph, but softer in person, as if the camera polished him into a myth. He smiled without the hardness of expecting something. Thank you, he said, taking the wallet gently. Would you like a reward? She opened her mouth to say no. Manny had taught her how to accept small kindnesses, but the words that came out were different. No, sir. Just wanted to return it. It's the right thing to do. He studied her. For a moment, the lobby of that building, with its marble and orchids and people who never touched the floor with their eyes, shrank down to the size of a child's hand. You came all this way in the rain? She nodded, blinking. Her hair was plastered to her forehead. Patrons in the lobby glanced over, curiosity disguised as casual interest. Maybe, she thought, this is the end of something. Maybe it will be a line in a life that otherwise never changes. He thanked her again and asked her name. She told him, careful and precise. He handed her a card, small and weighty, with a number that meant nothing to her. "If you ever need anything," he said, "call this." She wanted to say she didn't take handouts, didn't want a life handed to her on a silver card. But the way he looked, transparent, like someone who had set out to test the world and found one honest corner, made her words stall. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city glinted like a new coin, and she walked back to the diner with the card tucked against her ribs. She put it in her pocket as if it were something alive. The rest of the day blurred into orders and conversation. Life returned to its rhythm. Coffee poured, plates clinked, and the radio hummed through the space between. The wallet did not leave her thoughts. The driver's license had been heavy with a kind of authority she had never owned. That night she told her younger brother everything, the misgivings and the small, strange warmth that had followed the man's thanks. He listened, tugging the blanket toward his chin. "Do you think he's rich?" he asked. "Very," she said, and there was a quiet awe in her voice. "Will he help us?" She did not know. Some hearts, she had learned, were generous. Others gave to feel generous. She folded into sleep with that ambiguity like a phone light under a pillow. A week passed. The card remained untouched in her pocket except for the nights she thought about it in the dark. She called the number once, Manny watching like a sentry, and a voice directed her to a small office downtown, less marble than warmth, more human than the tower. He wanted to meet with her again, he said, and the appointment was set. The office was small and smelled of coffee and paper. She sat opposite him at a table that had seen many hands. He watched her with the same kind attention that had made the receptionist's question feel like a test of a different sort. He told her, quietly, that he had been doing something for a while, leaving wallets in pockets, trains, cafes. Not because he liked the drama of it, but because when you build walls of comfort, it becomes too easy to forget the world outside them. He wanted to know if there were people who still returned that which was not theirs. "It started small," he said. "I thought the world would be emptier than it is. Sometimes it is. But sometimes people surprise you." She found she had questions instead of needing explanations. "Why put people through that?" she asked. "Why make a test of something so simple?" He smiled, and there was no self-congratulation in it. "Because the results matter," he said. "Because one honest person can remind others how to be. Because sometimes the only way to change the rules is to see who still follows them when everyone else has given up." Her voice was blunt. "What do you do with the people who pass the test?" He looked at her like someone reading the fine print of a contract he had written in good faith. "I help them. Not everyone needs a gift. Some need an opportunity. Some need a hand. Some need a bridge. And sometimes, it's nothing more than a recognition that the world hasn't completely forgotten them." There was an edge in the story she did not expect. "Do you really think a card from a man with a building changes anything?" she asked. "Or does it make people think they've been saved?" He considered that. "It can do both," he admitted. "It depends on what the person wants from it." She had never wanted a handout. The word made her think of charity lines and pity she had felt when strangers saw her hands and quickly looked away. What she wanted, deep down, was a chance to breathe without measuring each breath by what it might cost. She wanted her brother to be well. She wanted the lights to stay on and for pancakes on a Saturday morning to be something she could actually give rather than imagine. "I don't want charity," she said. "If you want to help us start something that lasts." He studied her face. There was a kind of respect in the way he listened that she hadn't expected. "Tell me what that is." She told him about the diner and how the owner, Manny, had kept the place open for years even though his knees hurt and his wife had left town. She told him about her brother's cough and the little community of people who worked and loved in hard places. She told him about the nights the gas went out and the way hope shrank like clothes in a hot wash. She spoke with the urgency of someone used to compressing a lifetime into the space of an evening. When she finished, the man folded his hands and reached into his briefcase. He placed a small envelope on the table. "I can't fix everything," he said, "but I can be part of building a bridge. Will you work with me on that? Not as a charity recipient, but as a partner." She laughed then, incredulous, the sound raw and full of surprise. "Me? A partner?" "Yes," he said. "You know this neighborhood. You know the grind. You know the people who will actually use a hand when it's offered. I have resources. You have knowledge. We can make something that lasts." It was not an offer to buy a life. It was an offer to build one. She took the envelope with shaking hands and found inside a check and a proposal, a small loan for the diner, a grant for health care, a scholarship fund for young people in the neighborhood who wanted to learn trades. The number was not astronomical, but it was enough to tilt the scale. Over the following months, everything she had previously thought immutable started to bend. The diner hired an assistant, a young woman who came in with 2 purses and a stack of dreams, and Manny finally got the surgery his knees had been postponing. Her brother began seeing a doctor who had time to prescribe and check back. They opened a small community kitchen next to the diner, an idea she had sketched on the back of an old receipt, and residents started volunteering. The loan terms were fair. The grant came with mentorship and an emphasis on sustainability. He didn't give her a mansion. He gave her the tools to unmake the edges that kept them small. People in the neighborhood noticed. They talked in doorways. Some were suspicious, assuming a man who gave money expected something in return. Others rolled their eyes, remembering the charity drives that had littered the area with promises that went nowhere. But slowly, the kitchen became a place where neighbors taught each other how to bake bread and sew uniforms. They taught kids how to balance a checkbook and how to fix a leaky pipe. Respect grew where resentment had lived before. At first, she kept the man's card in a drawer, a reminder of rain and a polite smile. Then she stopped thinking about him as a spectacle and more as a partner in a strange, improvised family. He came by sometimes, not to watch but to learn. He worked in silence, chopping vegetables, washing pots, and listening. When people saw him on a stool beside them, shoulder to shoulder, conversation grew honest instead of transactional. There were critics. Someone stamped a comment online about a billionaire playing savior. There were whispers that the test had been a stunt. She read them all and kept her head down. Tests, she learned, can be cruel. But sometimes they are the only way to find the human heart beneath the day's armor. One afternoon, months after the wallet incident, she found him at the back of the kitchen wiping his hands with a towel. He had a tiredness to him she didn't remember from the first day, as if the act of doing had altered him. "Do you regret it?" she asked, surprising herself with the bluntness. "For what?" he asked. "For all of this. For leaving a wallet on a sidewalk like bait." He smiled, small and rueful. "I used to think money solved things," he said. "I don't think that anymore. People solve things. Money just makes space for people to do the solving. As for the wallet, maybe it was foolish. Maybe it was necessary. Either way, I'm glad it found you." She told him about the nights she lied awake, wondering if she had traded one version of dignity for another. He listened and then told her something she had never expected to hear. "There is no purity in life," he said. "There are just choices. You made one that mattered. You could have done otherwise. Some people would not have." When the winter came, the kitchen expanded into a program: apprenticeships, supplies, a small van to deliver meals to elderly neighbors. Her brother's cough eased, and for the first time since their mother had been alive, the apartment stayed warm through December. She bought an extra blanket with her share of the first profits and placed it over a sleeping child at the community shelter with hands that trembled at the softness. Not long after, there was an awards night at a hotel downtown. They handed out titles like philanthropist and community hero. She went because the man insisted she be present. She stood awkward in a borrowed dress, her hands knotted together, the lobby lights flashing like cameras. When they announced her name, some people clapped out of politeness and others because they had seen how the kitchen had changed breakfast for children. She walked to the stage and looked out at a sea of polite faces. "I didn't do this alone," she said into the microphone, voice steady. "This started because someone chose to test the world and because a lot of people in my neighborhood chose to answer. You can call it luck or you can call it a choice. Either way, what matters is that we keep choosing to be better." She did not speak of the wallet. She did not speak of the moment when the man had offered her a card in a lobby and the rain had made the city smell like possible things. She spoke of people who had come together and the strange, quiet power of returning what was lost. After the ceremony, she walked outside and found the man waiting near a shrub, taking the chill like someone who had lived his whole life in controlled climates and was slowly learning what weather felt like. He handed her an envelope. Inside, written in his careful hand, were numbers, plans for a scholarship named after her mother, an expansion of the kitchen, and a small trust for her brother's future. But there was also another line, a simple sentence, for when she needed reminding of what had started it all. "Thank you for choosing what is right," it read. She held that small praise like something that could not be easily taken away. The city's lights hummed. For the first time in a long time, the future looked like a room with windows she could open. Years passed. The diner became a hub. The kitchen fed more people than anyone expected. Children grew into apprentices and then into leaders. The man continued his odd project, but it changed him. He learned to listen before he judged. He learned to step back and let others lead. They made mistakes, stumbles, and miscalculations that cost time and pride, but they fixed them together. And sometimes, when she walked the neighborhood and passed a sidewalk where someone might have left something important, she bent to pick it up. The act felt smaller now and larger than before. She knew what it was to be tempted by need and what it was to honor a promise whispered by a mother who had died, holding a hand and making rules for a life. The wallet had been a test of someone else's curiosity, but the real test had been hers. The day she chose to walk into a lobby in the rain and give back a small leather thing that had been large as the world. She never forgot the image of herself, young and hungry and careful, standing under fluorescent lights and holding a credit card that belonged to a man whose name was everywhere. The city had offered her 1,000 reasons to change, and she had changed, not into the person others expected, but into someone who could make a choice and live with its consequences. When people told her story, how a poor girl returned a billionaire's missing wallet and changed a neighborhood, they always left out one detail. They never mentioned that neither of them had needed to prove anything to the other. They had simply stumbled into a truth both had been avoiding, that sometimes honor matches money, and sometimes money buys the chance to honor. What mattered was not who owned the wallet, but the fact that it had been returned.